This is Kerrigan Branham, and on today's episode, we are going to be talking about the state of Massachusetts. So, the state of Massachusetts was established as a state on February 6, 1788, and as many of you know, the state capital is Boston, which has a population of 6,054,776 people as of 2021, and is a New England region, and their mayor is Michelle Wu, who has a background in law and politics, and as she's currently the mayor of Boston as of 2021, she is the first Asian American woman to serve on the Boston City Council, which is very impressive. Now, a little bit about the history before present day. Massachusetts was settled by Puritans, and they were the first to settle on the land other than the Native American tribes that were there first. And many people know the Mayflower ship, which is the one that brought the Europeans over to America, and this is where the first Thanksgiving was held in the state of Massachusetts. They had a theocratic government at first, and the ruler of a theocratic government is the head of government and religion. And this does make sense because they were Puritans. And to kind of clear the confusion as to what a Puritan is, they're English Protestants who came over and they wanted to purify the church because the Church of England was Roman Catholic, and they truly didn't like that process, and they wanted it to become more Protestant. So they became Puritans, and they were trying to fix the church. The theocratic government was ruled by John Winthrop and Thomas Dudley, and they were the first established people to rule the society in Massachusetts. And their constitution was written in 1780 by John Adams, and then it was used as a model after the U.S. Constitution that America uses today. And as of 2023, when this is being made, there have been 120 amendments made to the original Constitution. And now we are going to get into the Salem witch trials, which everyone is very familiar of for the most part, but I want to go into it because I feel like the Puritan culture of early Massachusetts and the theocratic government had a lot to do with how these trials were handled. So the Salem witch trials happened from 1692 to 1693, which it ended about mid-1693, and roughly 200 people were accused of being witches, and 19 to 20, depending on what source you look at, were killed. And the last person to be cleared of these accusations was Elizabeth Johnson Jr. in mid-2020, or 2022, I'm sorry. And religion was a huge factor in this because they're Puritans, and they were originally Protestants, and witchcraft was something that was not very well liked. And the women were mainly the ones who were accused and killed during these trials, and it's a very short span, but 19 to 20 people is a big chunk of their society in Salem. 5 men of these 19 to 20 people killed were also a very significant part in this. King William's War was another cause of these trials because of the tension between displaced people and families with ties to Salem's port, and the war was causing stress on these people, and they were unable to get their items in through the port. And Samuel Parris was the first ordained minister of this society, and he had a lot to do with the accusations thrown, and he is described as greedy and mean. His daughter Elizabeth Parris and his niece Abigail Williams had fits of rage, and they were throwing tantrums essentially, and they accused 3 women. These 3 women were Tituba, which was the Parris family slave, Sarah Good, who is a homeless woman, and Sarah Osborne, who was essentially a impoverished old woman. Tituba claimed that the devil made her do it, but Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne claimed their innocence, and essentially they weren't cleared. But all of those who were convicted were killed by hanging in the gallows, or they essentially died in jail. And then tests were used to see if they were witches, such as, from off the top of my head, there was tying things to their feet and then throwing them in rivers to see if they would sink or swim. And if they sank, they would be cleared, or if they floated, they would be accused of being a witch, which isn't very fair. And now we're going to get into the political culture. Massachusetts is a mainly blue state, and in the last presidential election, 65.6% of the state voted Democrat in the election. And in the ranking of being blue, Massachusetts takes number 3. And in the political culture, they have top donating groups. And these top donating groups are General Motors, who donated over $5 million, Auto Care Association, who donated over $4.5 million, Toyota Motors North America, who donated $4.5 million, Ford Motor Company, who donated over $4.4 million, and the Action Now Initiative, who donated over $3.6 million. And their top interest groups are Reproductive Equity Now, Massachusetts Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Massachusetts Teacher Association, Massachusetts Nurses Association, and Planned Parenthood Advocacy Fund of Massachusetts. The recognized political parties, there are 4 of them. There are the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Libertarian Party, and the Independents. And in order to vote in Massachusetts, you have to be 18 or older, and you have to be registered at least 10 days before the elections start to vote. And in order to vote, you must have a valid ID, birth certificate, or any document with the name and address of the person trying to vote, which could be a water bill, electricity bill, anything like that. And then locations are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. during voting periods, but they can be opened at 5:45 in the morning. And the people who are in line whenever the polls are closed are able to vote even though it's closed, and they do allow early voting and mail-in ballots. And then felons are also allowed to vote after they serve their sentence. And I couldn't find anything that specified which, like if all felons could or if it depended on the crime committed. And when voting, you're obviously going to vote for legislators and an executive. And the senators of Massachusetts there's 40 of them. There are 37 Democrats and 3 Republicans. And in order to run for Senate, you have to be 18, registered to vote, and you have to live in the state for 5 years. And then for the House of Representatives, there are 158 members, but there are supposed to be 160, but 2 spots are unclaimed right now, so they're empty. And the demographics of that are 132 Democrats, 25 Republicans, and 1 unenrolled. And the current governor is Democrat Maura Healey, and her lieutenant governor is Kim Driscoll, who is also a Democrat. For the structure of the legislature, they are a bicameral structure, which means there's 2 separate ways, or 2 separate chambers. And also, to be in the House of Representatives, you have to be 18, registered to vote, and live in the state for a year. Each of them get 2-year terms and are elected on even number years. So the senators and House of Representatives that are in the legislature now were voted in 2022. And their judicial structure consists of the Supreme Court, the Appeals Court, the Executive Office of the Trial Court, 7 different trial courts, the Massachusetts Probation Services, and the Office of the Jury Commissioner. And for the court, the 7 different little courts that they have are the Probate and Family Court Department, the Land Court Department, Housing Court Department, Juvenile Court Department, Boston Municipal Court Department, District Court Department, and the Superior Court Department. And then from any of these courts, or from the District Court, the Boston Court, and the 4 lower levels, you go to the Appeals Court. And then from the Superior Court, you go straight to the Supreme Judicial Court. But from the Appeals Court, if you make it there, you go to the Supreme Judicial Court if you are not satisfied with the ruling. And for the judges of these courts, the governor appoints all judges on the bench, and they have to be approved by the governor's council. And the judges can stay on the bench until they either turn 70 or they essentially retire. Direct democracy in Massachusetts, the people can file free petitions, and any person or group can file a bill, and the legislature has to look at it and treat it as if it were any other bill that can be potentially passed. And this is the only state that allows people to file bills directly to legislature instead of taking it through a process. And statistically, most of the bills filed this way don't get passed. And with the current legislature, there are some policy pushes which have been noticed around the country. And one of these is the decarbonization roadmap. And the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs is trying to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 85% within the next 27 years, so 2050. And then the governor and lieutenant governor are both wanting to use state-owned land to help create affordable housing for the state because they're having a housing crisis. And then gun control is another big push for the legislature. They're trying to create stricter gun laws and making sales of AR guns or assault rifles harder. And they're also wanting to make it illegal to purchase weapons that do not have a serial number, because if they don't have a serial number, they can't be tracked. And then now we're going to get into some state fun facts after this break. So I don't know how many states have this, but Massachusetts does have a state polka, which is say hello to someone you know in Massachusetts. Their state flower is the Mayflower, which is named after the ship where the Puritan settlers came. Their state muffin is the corn muffin. And going back to Boston, as we started, the first subway system was built and operated in Boston. And many of you know the Fig Newton cookie is named after Newton, Massachusetts. And also, here's an oddball fun fact for all of you people who like the random off-the-wall fun facts. It's technically illegal to use tomatoes in clam chowder. I don't know what caused them to do that, but there are your state fun facts for the state of Massachusetts. And I hope that this clarified some of the political culture and the history and the policy pushes that have influenced the way that the legislature runs. So, see you next time.